Hey, what's up everyone, Bubbleking here, and welcome back to another discussion. I haven't done a discussion video in a while, so this one's going to be on deck switching. So when they reworked the main game mode to capture and payload in patch 22, they introduced this deck switching mechanic in the game. I believe deck switching is a great mechanic, and it really adds a lot of depth and strategy to the game, not just at the start but throughout the match. You're trying to counter the enemy's deck and they're trying to counter you, it's a bit of luck involved, but a lot of good counters can come through and strategy in that deck switching mechanic. But currently in the game we don't really see people using this deck switching, and it's currently not really a viable strategy. And this is mostly because it's currently too punishing to switch a deck. So if you don't know, when you switch a deck in the game between rounds, you lose your ult charge completely. So if you have like 50% on your ult charge, if you switch decks, it completely goes back to 0. So you have to start charging it from 0% again. And the problem with this is, since the capture point times are so slow, so fast, so much of the game revolves around the characters and their ults, because ult can just straight up win you the capture point in at the moment, since if you ace their team, you're pretty much going to get the point straight away at the start. So characters like Barik, Grok, Androxus, stuff like that, characters that have these really impactful game-changing ults, it's pretty much impossible for them to switch decks mid-game, even if it makes their deck stronger against the enemy comp, just because they can't. It's like too risky and too much of a cost to give up their ult charge, because it could straight up win them the point. They can't just switch it up. It's just too strong. So that's one of the problems we have there. But there's also the fact that making custom decks are currently too expensive outside of the game. So a lot of people have trouble crafting one deck. It's not too bad. I think it could be a bit better for players, but for deck switching to really come into full effect, players will need to have around 3 different decks, 4 different decks that all counter different strategies, or are strong against certain things, or are good for certain things depending on what your comp is and what comp you're going up against. And players aren't just don't have the gold in the game currently. They might later on, as when we get into ranked games and players have played a lot more and they got a lot of gold. Some of the veteran players will have 3 or 4 decks they can switch between, but currently a lot of the players do not have the gold to create 1, 2, 3, 4 decks full of custom cards that are pretty good. Now they can switch between the pre-built decks, but it doesn't really add much strategy there. There's not too much you can do with them to counter the enemy comps. They're pretty one-dimensional sometimes. Now, the first solution most people are going to think is just to straight up remove the resetting of ult charge when you switch decks. However, this can cause some problems. So if there's no drawback of switching decks, the characters are going to have ult specific decks. So we already have some of them. We have some cards that revolve around the ults. There's one for Buck where everyone trapped inside his ult increases his damage by 40% or something like that. And what could happen is, if we have these really ult-centric decks come into play, people just switch to them when they have their ult up, and it just makes ults even more impactful than they currently are, which can make them really unbalanced. So it kind of, it's a tough spot to be in, because if they remove the drawbacks completely, everyone's going to have a ult-specific deck for when they have their ult up to go get the capture point. But if there is a drawback and it's too much, everyone's just going to stick with the one deck. So I've been thinking of some solutions, and I'm not really sure what's the best solution, but one of the solutions I came up with was that we could make deck swapping cost credits instead of currently the ult charge. So you could say if you want to swap your deck, it's 100 credits, and this way it still sort of impacts the game. Like, for example, instead of picking up, say, blast shields for 100 credits, instead you swap your deck to a deck you think's more optimal in the situation to counter the enemy comp, or even to work more with your comp. It really depends what's going on in the game, obviously, to work out if blast shield's going to be better for you, or switching your deck's going to be better for you. It's going to be on a game by game basis. This way, with this solution of using credits instead of ult charge, it's less punishing, but at the same time it still keeps a risk factor to switching decks, and it still, you know, could punish people if they switch decks at the wrong time or switch to a bad deck. They're gonna miss out on 100 credits, and if they want to switch back, they're gonna have to use another 100 credits, which is why we can't really have it too high, because otherwise no one's gonna be buying burn cards. They're just gonna be switching decks every round. So I think a low amount's gonna be pretty good for a solution like that. 100, maybe 50, really depends. It's gonna be need to be tested, obviously. But yeah, I think that's a good solution that still keeps the risk of deck swapping, but it allows for it's not too punishing. You know, you're not gonna straight up lose a capture point like you do when you lose your ult. So I want to know what you guys think about deck swapping. Do you like it? Hate it? Do you guys have any solutions to the problems we currently have with deck swapping, where, you know, not many people really use it? How do you think it could be improved? I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about this problem. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the discussion, and I'll see you guys next time.